Okay, welcome everyone back into our module for Live Out Loud, your Badassery 101. And I'm so happy to have my friend Erin DiMaggio on with me in this module, because in this section, we're talking about the things that we say yes to. So last module, we talked about things and people we should say no to, but there are some times that we should say yes to taking the leap and taking chances. So I'd love to have a chat with Erin to focus on this. And Erin, my friend, as you see here, she is the owner of Born Wonderful. You can find her on bornwonderful.com. She leads private movement-related retreats, mostly for women, but I'm sure you will welcome men into some co-ed groups as well. And she teaches you how to really get in tune with your intuition, with your spirituality, with your emotional state via feeling, so that we can learn how to really listen to ourselves. Because as we take care of ourselves, then we can better take care of others in our lives. So welcome, Erin.
Thank you so much. I'm so happy to be with you today.
And I always love talking to you, coming to your events. I just always feel so renewed and re-energized coming to one of your retreats. What you said on Facebook on Born Wonderful page last week really resonated with me, which I'll share with our students right now via screen share. And I'll pull up what you said last week. I'll just read it out loud for now. Share. And it says, what Erin said last week is that I am a leaper, as in that kind of person who believes if I leap, the net will appear. I have leapt enough to know that sometimes leaping is not a good idea. But here's what I do know for sure. Sometimes leaping is not wise. Sometimes we have to wait, to pause, to reflect, to edit, to look at the map before driving off to a new place you've never been before, to plan, to ponder, and to put on a harness and get someone to belay you before you go climbing up rock faces. Yes, bravery is innate in me. I was born brave, but patience I am still learning. In this moment, I thought it would be fun to fill my wagon with 50 pounds of blankets and singing bowls and chimes to create a sacred space for a couple on the beach. I ended up getting the wagon stuck in a rut, and luckily someone came along to help me out. I had to change my plans to go somewhere new because leaping has also made me flexible. Learn to bend so you don't break. Leap only if you don't mind crashing, because crashing comes with leaping. And wow, that was just so powerful. And when you posted that last week, it really resonated with me. And it connected with me in such a way. But I want to get your thought. What was in your head when you posted that?
Gosh, okay. So much. I have to go back to that moment. So what I have been doing for since 2011. 2011, I was in a master's degree program at the University of Santa Monica, working on my degree in spiritual psychology. And in the second year, we, as part of this process, and spiritual psychology is a process of going deeper into who we are as spiritual beings having a human experience. So it's really about uncovering all of the conscious and unconscious blocks that prevents us from being the person we were born to be. And one of the things that I realized in that year was that I wanted to be a writer and I wanted to be a speaker. And it wasn't that I necessarily wanted to be that, but that was the vision that kept coming forward, and like this prompting saying, this is who you are. Yeah. And I'd be like, yeah, right, that is not who I am. But something else inside me kept saying, yes, you are. That's what you were supposed to do. So as part of that process that began then, anytime I would hear those voices of inspiration, I would write them down. Mm-hmm. Like as fast as I could, because otherwise they would be gone. And then I would be like, oh man, that was good. And so I think in that moment, I was walking on the trails and I was reflecting back to times in my life where I stopped leaping and thinking about those moments, and then thinking how much I need to always remember the truth of who I am And the truth of who I am is that I am a leaper.
Yeah.
And so I'm not sure if I'm answering your question,
Yes,
but
totally.
I was out and about. So a lot of times on Instagram, I try not to worry too much about grammar or punctuation or anything. I just have an idea and I don't want to lose it because I think somebody could benefit from it. And like hearing that you actually benefited from that, because to me, as I heard you reading it back, I was like, that's why I'm supposed to share. Like, it's not just about me. It's that somebody else might get something from this. And
Exactly.
so if I don't share it, it's going to get lost.
Yeah.
Did that answer your question?
Absolutely.
Well,
And
I forgot what you asked.
I thought that was so powerful because so many of us, even though you and I are brave, so many of us still need to hear that time to time to renew our bravery and to remind other people that you need to live your life out loud and take the leap, because the idea of not doing so and maybe regretting or feeling just pent up about it feels so much worse than the crashing and maybe failing and maybe it turning out not what you imagined. So I always tell people, as you do too, that leaping is a lot better than the not leaping.
Yeah. Well, I think also too, because I have leaped so much, I am the type of person that will get overly excited and you'll be like, hey, let's go to Mexico. I'll be like, yeah. And I will come pick you up. And I might have forgotten to like pack some, essentials.
Yeah.
because I'm just like, I am like, yes, it's going to be fun. But that part on that day when I was thinking about how I got stuck, what I have found for myself, and I think, and I'm going to acknowledge myself to this, I think it's because I have an openness and I make it fun when I'm struggling in some way.
Yeah.
That day when I did get stuck, I had that oh shit moment where I'm like, oh my God, why did I do this? And then I look up and then there's two people walking down the trail and this man looks at me and says, can I help you?
Yeah.
And at first, my first inclination was to be like, nah, I got it. But I was like, no, take the help. And so I have always found that when I'm stuck, if I'm open for it, there's always somebody else there willing to help. And then they feel good. And then the whole rest of the day, he knows that he did something good.
Yeah.
And so it's like, no matter what happens, we can make it turn into something great and magical. We can be like, yeah, that worked out. It's okay. It wasn't exactly what I planned, but it worked out.
Exactly.
And we don't know that till we go through it. So we don't do it. We never get to have that experience. If we just are waiting, we never find out what might happen.
Exactly. It's like the universe always has our back. We just have to go out and do what we want to do. Yeah. And the right help or the right avenue would just naturally manifest itself that's right for us in that moment as the helpers that came along your path.
Yeah. And I think it's also too getting over, because we mostly only see the finished products.
Yeah.
So it's about getting over this idea that it's going to be perfect.
Right.
Getting over this idea that it's, like we're going to come out clean on the other side. Like, no, when you go on an adventure, you are going to be sweaty and muddy and dirty and your feet are going to hurt. And that's part of it. Like, we just see the picture at the top. Yeah. We have to remember all of those steps in between.
Exactly. So you've taken so many leaps and risks in your life, and that's part of your bravery. What do you think was the biggest taking the leap moment or event of your life, and what made you want to take that leap for that goal or that event?
Okay, so this is I got this question ahead of time, and I'm so glad because I had a chance to reflect over the weekend and really think about it. Yeah. And right now, as I'm sitting here, I'm 42. I have 3 children. Their ages 14, 11, and 6. And I was looking back at my life from the perspective of a mother. Yeah. And so I thought, when I was thinking about it, my first inclination was to say the biggest leap of my life was when I was 18. When I was 18 years old, I was living in Price Hill, Cincinnati, Ohio, which is a very small, white, at the time, it's changed now, but in 1996, very small white, Irish, German, Catholic town. The only person of diversity that I knew were my 3 cousins that were biracial. They were adopted. And my best friend who was Presbyterian or maybe Protestant, but there was no diversity at all. And I had this craving to see new things. I'm like, I want to explore the world. I want to go somewhere else. And I went my junior year in high school. I visited my sister Shannon, who was stationed in the Navy in San Diego, and I was sitting there watching the Navy SEALs train on a sand dune, and I'm like, I need to move here. Yeah, whatever it takes, I will find a way to get here. And so my senior year in high school, I looked into the cost of colleges, and that was just it wasn't anywhere in our financial planning for as a family. There was no way I could afford it. And I talked to a career counselor, and they told me about the program where if you work a year, you can establish residency, and then you can go to community colleges, state schools, all these other options. And for me, school wasn't my primary focus. Having a wild and adventurous life at the time was. And so we packed up our car. My sister moved back home for a little while. She and I then decided to go to LA. I had never been to LA. I had $1,000 that I saved up that summer. That was it. And we moved out without knowing a soul. I didn't even have a car. I didn't have any job, opportunities. We parked the car, and this is how free we were at the time, put on our rollerblades and rollerbladed around looking for a house, an apartment to rent, like writing down notes. Okay. We had quarters, so we could stop at a payphone to call somebody. So anyway, as I say that was brave only because people, when I tell them this story, they say, oh, that was brave. But I was really reflecting on it over the weekend, and I was like, I don't think that was brave, because I wasn't scared at all. There was no sense of fear. I was just like, yeah, it's going to be fun. That this sense of freedom. And so then I was with my son, who's 14, and we were in the parking lot. And obviously he's too old to hold my hand. And I realized, like, when I am with my children in a parking lot, or anywhere where there's traffic or there's other human beings involved, I feel terrorized. I feel so scared. And then I realized the bravest thing I do is what I do every day. And it's letting go of their hand to let them live their life. And then I remembered my mom, when we were 18, standing in the driveway, tears straining her face down, tears, trying to put on a fake smile, to wave, to say goodbye. And so to me, I was like, you know what? The bravest thing I do is really what I do every day. And that's trying to let my kids go and have their own life like I did.
That really, I totally identify with that too, because when, our own blood is involved, our children, we feel more fearful of what could happen to them than what could happen to ourselves. For us, it's an adventure, but for them, it's on us to kind of keep them alive and not let them. But we also have to let them live, and and sometimes living could involve getting a little hurt sometimes, and that's part of raising kids and living. So for those people that don't have this innate bravery as you do, what would you suggest? How would they cultivate and nurture that bravery so that they will be more willing to take risks in the future? How do they cultivate that for themselves?
I'd say the best thing in the world is focusing on small steps. So deciding what is the big picture, like knowing in your heart, what is something I really, you ask yourself these questions. You have to ask yourself these questions. You say, what is it that I really want out of this life that I've been given? Because we only get one, and we don't know how long we're here for. That we don't know that. So we have to say, what is it that I really want to do? And if it's something you really want to do, you have to look at what the fears are and acknowledge them. You have to be like, this is what I'm afraid of. Am I willing to take that risk? And if the answer is yes, then you start with baby steps. You start with 3 footsteps, these small steps, and you work in increments. So maybe if the fear is a fear of heights, but you want to be able to climb a mountain, then you go somewhere where it's not too high at first. You know, you start off there and then you acknowledge your progress. You have to acknowledge every step that you take, even if it feels silly, even if it feels small, because the more you acknowledge each of those little steps, the more you're retraining your brain to trust the process, because everything that we do is a process. So you start small. You acknowledge the fear that's there, and you talk to the fear, and you be like, hey, you know, I know you're here, but I am driving the bus. I'm in charge. I am the leader of this ship, whatever, the captain, and you're going to go in the back. You can come with me if you need to keep me safe. But ultimately, that the dreamer has got to be in charge, has got to lead the way.
I love it. I love how you want to have a conversation with the fear and kind of invite them onto the journey with you, but sit on the back of the bus because you're driving it. You're driving your dream and not your fear. The fear is always going to be a passenger to keep us safe, as you said, but at the end, you're driving the bus.
That's right. You take charge. You got to take charge. You'd be like, and you say it. You know, I do this with myself. Whatever. If I feel fear, I will say, I will put my hands on my heart and I'll say, I'm in charge of my life. And I'm letting the fear know, like, get out of there.
Yeah. I love it. And you're right. We need to take the small steps and acknowledge the small wins that help push us forward, for us to acknowledge the process that we're making, because nobody goes from, you know, sea level to 20,000 feet high altitude mountain. We all take small steps, and a lot of us don't take the time to acknowledge our little victories, because all we see is on Instagram people at the top, but we don't see their struggles and how they had to climb small mountains for 10 years before getting to the top.
Right. Exactly.
So you have 3 beautiful kids. How do you show bravery so that they are also willing to take chances? How do you show that to your kids so they're willing to step outside of their comfort zone sometimes too?
I think, at least with my kids, and I think this is true for a lot of kids, they're born brave. Like and I think this is true for everyone. We're born open. We are born, you know, feeling everything, receptive. And so my job is to make sure I don't get in their way. When they want to do something that is maybe scary. I mean, you know, I have to be the voice of reason, obviously, too. If they're on the edge of a cliff, I'm going to pull them back. Put your harness on, now you can go. Yeah. But I think mostly it's to acknowledge them when they are doing something brave. I know recently my daughter's been struggling a little bit with social anxiety, and so we're working with her through that. But what I do, and I think this is helping, is when I see her doing something that I know took courage, I will acknowledge it. I'll be like, I know that was a little scary for you to talk to that person and you did it. That was really brave of you. And then in our house, they see me just doing everything. But I think because they've always seen me doing everything, it's not a big deal to them. Like, we went in Hawaii and there were cliffs, and, you know, I was one of the grown-ups up there jumping off the cliffs. Like, and to them, they're not impressed. like other adults are, other kids are. I see the other kids like, oh, your mom's cool. But my kids are like, oh God, you know? So they're really not, like, you know, because that's their norm. That's their normal. They see me, you know, if I need to speak out to somebody, or, you know, I corrected a cop in our neighborhood the other day that was speeding up and down our streets so fast. I'm like, you know, you're here to keep us safe, but you're going too fast. And my kids are like, Mom. Yeah. You know? But that's brave, you know, that, like, to some people that's crazy, but I'm like, no, like, we have to hold each other accountable.
Right. That's really good. And a lot of people might think twice about calling out an authority figure like a police officer. But you're right. We do have to hold each other accountable, you know, even those that are in authority figures, because if they're not doing what they're supposed to do, how can they expect us to follow the law too?
Right.
What would you imagine your life would be like if you haven't been as brave as you have been and haven't taken the leaps and risks that you have in life? What do you imagine your life would have been like if you were not as brave as you are?
Yeah. Well, I think there have been periods where I was less brave, and that happened when I became a mom, when I had Frank, my oldest, and really for a period of like 5 years, where I was really afraid of me getting hurt and them not having me.
Mm.
So I stopped doing a lot of stuff. And I can tell you, I felt like dying.
Mm.
I felt like I was only a piece of me.
Mm.
I felt broken because I had left all of these things that brought me joy and brought me that made life worth living. I had stopped doing a lot of them. And so it was a slow depression. And I think I see a lot of people living that way, just this slow existence, like slowly dying, not exploring. The poet David White has this quote that I love, and he says, "I want to grow younger to my death." And so I know when I am doing things that I feel brave doing, I feel as if I am growing younger. And so, yeah, so I don't have to imagine, because there have been times where I have not been being courageous or brave, and it's okay. You know, I want to say that to people if they're there in that space. That's okay. That's part of the process.
Yeah.
You just don't want to stay there too long.
Exactly. That's really powerful, because I see that in a lot of people too. They're living kind of like a shell version of themselves, but not the fullest version of themselves, because they're so wrapped up with working and being a parent, and that's they've become only that, a worker and a parent, and they've forgotten other identities that they used to have, and stop chasing the dreams and goals that they used to have before children came into the picture. So the children's only see them as a parent, not as anything else. But our kids see ourselves as hikers, adventurers, travelers, and they see us living this full life. And I think that's one of the best ways to role model for our kids to also lead full lives.
Yeah. Definitely. Yeah. And that's what I always go back to. And my husband and I were having this conversation the other day that, because both he and I have a similar pattern of not wanting to ask for help, my husband and I. Mm-hmm. And I said to him, they're watching everything we do. Do you want them to grow up and feel like they can't trust anybody to help them? Do you want them to feel like they are an island that has to sustain themselves? Or do you want them to know that it's okay to ask for help? And we both agree we want them to know that they can ask for help. And so they have to see that that is normal. That is part of our life. So whatever it is, they have to see, because otherwise they have this idea that growing up is horrible. Like, why would I want to go to college and get a job because you're all miserable? Well, I don't want to be like you. And so we have to show them that there's so much to look forward to in life.
Right. Or if it's not college, it could be something else, but that no man is an island. And that, when we recognize that and ask for help and live the fullest life that we can be, then we're doing ourselves the greatest service possible with this life that we're given.
So much. So true.
Now, I want to thank you for taking the time today and chatting with me. Tell me, do you have any special events coming up in February or March?
Well, my most special event, I have it with me right now. I self-published this little book. It's small, and Roseanney, you inspired me so much to actually get one done. This is 33 pages, and on it is a process that I've been doing for years of releasing what you no longer need, remembering who you are, and renewing your commitments to yourself. So that the event that I'm working on right now is selling those copies. Mm-hmm. And then I do have some events coming up, a public event in May, another manifesting magic event that's going to be movement and meditation, and also going through the 3-step process of creating a more magical mood. And then I do private events. So if people want to hire me, I say some people hire clowns and princesses for parties. You can hire me to lead a women's circle or to lead a movement-based class. But all of my offerings are up on my website on bornwonderful.com.
Awesome. Check out Erin's website, bornwonderful.com, if you'd like to have a private retreat led by her. I've gone to her events before, and I can tell you from firsthand experience, the Born Wonderful movement and meditation retreat is absolutely wonderful. It's renewing, it's re-energizing, and you really connect with other people that you meet in the circle to renew your spirituality. And you're taking a huge, huge leap this summer, which I am so excited about for you, because I've been there. And I know that for you to do this and go and do that by yourself, it's ginormous. Tell us a little bit about your summer solo trip.
Okay, well, I have you to thank for this. So this summer I am going to Kilimanjaro. I'm going to climb Urho Peak. It is the highest peak in Africa. I'm doing the 8-day Lemosho Trail, and this has been a dream of mine for over 20 years. And I just kind of set it aside thinking I wasn't going to do it. And then I met Roseanney and I read a couple of her books. I can't remember which book it was in, but you talk about, I think in both, but she had gone to Kilimanjaro. And she's always like, whatever you want to do it now. And so as I was reading that, I was like, I got to do it. And I went to bed. I had a dream that I was in Africa. And the next morning I woke up and I signed up for a trip. Yes. So I will be going. I can't wait.
I love it. Talk about taking a leap, having a dream. And the next day you just start researching on the tour groups and taking actions towards actualizing that dream. And for those of you listening out there, and watching this e-course, Erin runs her own business. She has 3 children. She has a husband. She has a full life. Yet she's still taking herself on this solo trip to another continent to climb the highest mountain of that continent. So there's no excuses for any of us not to pursue our dreams. You could do it if you set your mind to it and take actions. So Erin, I want to thank you again for being on. For those of you who would like to work with Erin, please visit her at bornwonderful.com and get her book on amazon.com.
Oh, thank you so much, Roseanney. This was such a treat.
Thank you so much.